The boot connected with Cole's ribs, a sharp cracking thud that sent a spasm of agony through his fever-racked body. He curled tighter into a ball against the brick wall of the loading dock, coughing violently. The cough sounded wet, rattling deep in a chest filled with infection. "I told you to move your trash, didn't I?" The voice belonged to Rick, the head of security for the Riverside Plaza, a man who wore his polyester uniform like it was a general's armor. He loomed over Cole, his face twisted in a sneer of absolute disgust. It was a Tuesday afternoon, but for Cole, time had blurred into a haze of heat and shivering cold since the river incident 3 days ago. "Please," Cole wheezed, his voice a broken whisper. "Just 5 minutes. I can't walk." "Not my problem, sewer rat," Rick spat. He kicked Cole's backpack, the faded canvas bag that held the entirety of Cole's worldly possessions, a torn sleeping bag, a flashlight without batteries, and $7.32. The bag skidded across the wet asphalt, landing in a puddle of oily runoff. "You're scaring the customers. You think the people eating at Le Monde want to look out the window and see a junkie shivering in the alley?" Cole tried to push himself up, but his arms trembled and collapsed. The Willamette River water he had swallowed days ago was killing him from the inside out. He was 20 years old, but in that moment, he felt like a ghost haunting his own body. Rick unclipped a baton from his belt. He wasn't going to use it to strike, but the threat was there. "Get up or I call the cops. And trust me, kid, with the mood I'm in, I'll tell them you took a swing at me. You want to spend your last days in a cell?" Cole closed his eyes. Maybe that was better. A cell had walls. A cell might have a doctor. He braced himself for another kick. Then the ground began to shake. It wasn't an earthquake. It was a vibration that started in the soles of Cole's worn-out sneakers and rattled the teeth in his skull. It was a low-frequency hum that rapidly escalated into a thunderous roar, a mechanical avalanche descending on the city. Rick froze, his baton halfway raised. He looked toward the entrance of the alley. The sound became deafening. The distinctive, syncopated rhythm of V-twin engines, hundreds of them, echoing off the canyon of skyscrapers. A single motorcycle turned into the alley. It was a massive, custom-made black Harley-Davidson, chrome gleaming like a weapon under the harsh sun. The rider was a giant of a man, wearing a leather cut that looked weather-beaten and sacred. On the back, the red and white lettering was unmistakable. Hell's Angels, Oregon. Rick swallowed hard, stepping back from Cole. He put on his professional smile, assuming the bikers were lost or looking for the plaza entrance. "Gentlemen," Rick shouted over the idling engine. "Deliveries are around the—" He was cut off as the alley filled. 2 bikes. 10. 50. The roar was suffocating. They blocked the exit, a sea of leather, denim, and steel. The air filled with the smell of high-octane exhaust and unwashed road dust. The lead rider, the giant, killed his engine. The sudden silence was heavier than the noise. He didn't look at Rick. He didn't look at the security guards rushing out from the back door. He took off his helmet, revealing a face carved from granite, with eyes that looked like they had seen wars, both foreign and domestic. This was Vincent Castellano, president of the Portland chapter. Rick, sweating now, tried to assert authority. "Look, if you guys are looking for trouble, I have the police on speed dial. This is private property. We're just clearing out some vagrant trash." He pointed his baton dismissively at Cole's slumped form. Vincent slowly dismounted. He walked past Rick as if the security guard didn't exist. He didn't even blink as he brushed past the baton. Vincent dropped to his knees on the dirty, oil-stained asphalt. He didn't care about his jeans. He didn't care about the grime. He reached out a tattooed hand, trembling slightly, and touched the shoulder of the vagrant trash. "Cole?" Vincent asked, his voice cracking with an emotion that terrified Rick more than any shout could have. Cole opened his glassy eyes, flinching, expecting another blow. Yeah. "I'm Vincent," the giant said, tears cutting tracks through the road dust on his face. "You saved my daughter. We've been looking for you." Rick's baton clattered to the ground. 3 days earlier. The August sun beat down on Portland like a hammer against an anvil. It was a physical weight, turning the air thick and heavy, making the horizon shimmer under the Morrison Bridge overpass. The shadows offered no relief from the 95-degree heat. They just trapped the humidity against the concrete. Cole Bennett sat with his back against a pillar, his fingers black with newsprint and dirt, counting the few crumpled bills he had left. $7.32. That was his net worth. That was the sum total of a life that had started with promise and derailed into the foster system after a drunk driver took his parents on a rainy Tuesday night 6 years ago. Now, at 20, Cole was a statistic. He was one of the invisible people, the ones commuters look through, not at. He was 20, but his face looked older, worn down by 2 years of sleeping on concrete, eating from dumpsters when the shelters ran out of food, and moving constantly to avoid the police sweeps that cleared out the camps every few weeks. His stomach growled, a sharp, twisting reminder that he hadn't eaten since yesterday morning. A kind woman at a bakery had given him a stale baguette. He had made it last as long as he could. Cole wiped the sweat from his forehead with the back of his hand and stared out at the Willamette River. It flowed past, brown and fast. It looked deceptive. To a tourist, it was a scenic waterway. To Cole, it was a predator. This time of year, the snowmelt from the distant Cascades made the current stronger than it looked, swirling with hidden force beneath the surface. He had seen it drag logs under, holding them down for minutes before spitting them out hundreds of yards downstream. When he first arrived in Portland, fresh out of a group home that had kicked him out on his 18th birthday, he had stood by that water and thought about letting it take him. It would be easy. Just a step. A breath of water instead of air. But something stubborn inside him refused to quit. Some small, annoying spark that whispered, not yet. Laughter drifted over from Tom McCall Waterfront Park. It was the sound of a different universe. Families spreading blankets on the lush grass, children running through the fountains, the smell of charcoal and sunscreen. Cole stood up, his joints popping. His knees ached, a deep, dull throb that never really went away. He decided to walk down to the park. Not to join in, but to scavenge. Maybe a family would leave a half-eaten pizza crust. Maybe he could find deposit cans in the recycling bins. He moved through the park like a ghost. He kept his head down, shoulders hunched, making himself small. He had learned the hard way that eye contact was an invitation for trouble. Eye contact meant, get a job or get away from my kids, or here comes the security guard. He walked along the rocky shoreline, where the manicured grass gave way to large boulders, and the river churned white against the bank. A group was gathered near the water's edge. It was a large party, loud and boisterous. Even from a distance, Cole could tell they weren't the typical suburban families. A row of heavy motorcycles was parked on the nearby access road. The men wore leather cuts despite the heat, their arms covered in ink, their laughter deep and rough. Hell's Angels. Cole gave them a wide berth. You didn't mess with angels. In the hierarchy of the streets, they were the apex predators. But his eyes were drawn to the perimeter of their group. While the adults were drinking beer from red cups and blasting classic rock from a Bluetooth speaker, a little girl was exploring the rocks. She couldn't have been more than 6. Dark curls bounced around her shoulders, and she wore a bright pink swimsuit with a white skirt. She was hopping from stone to stone, a small fairy in a land of giants. Cole stopped. A flicker of worry sparked in his gut. The current moved fast here. The water level was high, hiding the moss-licked surface of the submerged rocks. Careful, Cole whispered to no one. The girl wandered further away from the group. Her father, a massive man with a thick beard and a president patch on his chest, was laughing a joke, his back turned for just a second. That was all it took. The girl crouched down, reaching for a piece of driftwood floating by. She extended her small hand, her center of gravity shifting. Cole took a step forward. He wanted to shout, "Hey, watch your kid," but his voice caught in his throat, rusted from disuse and fear. The girl's foot slipped on the algae. There was no scream, no cinematic splash. She just tumbled sideways, a flash of pink against the brown water, and then she was gone. The river swallowed her instantly, the roar of the rapids drowning out the small splash. Cole didn't think. He didn't weigh the pros and cons. He didn't consider that he was weak from hunger, or that he was wearing heavy denim and boots. The spark inside him, the one that kept him alive, suddenly roared into a flame. He sprinted. He hit the rocks at full speed, launching himself into the air, diving into the churning brown water just as the girl's head bobbed up 10 feet downstream. The water hit Cole like a sledgehammer of ice. It knocked the wind out of him, instantly soaking his clothes, turning his jeans into lead weights that tried to drag him to the bottom. The current was terrifying. It wasn't just water. It was a living thing, grabbing his legs, twisting his body, spinning him around. He surfaced, gasping, spitting out grit and gasoline-tasting water. Where is she? Panic exploded in his chest. He treaded water, fighting the river's grip, scanning the chaotic surface. There. A patch of pink, 5 yards away, moving fast toward the bridge pilings. If she hit the pilings, the undertow would pull her down and keep her there. Cole swam. He swam with a strength he didn't know he possessed, a desperate, adrenaline-fueled thrashing. His muscles burned. His lungs screamed for air. He cut across the current, angling to intercept her. The girl went under again. No. Cole screamed, choking on water. He dove. He opened his eyes in the murky darkness, seeing nothing but swirling brown silt. He reached out blindly, his fingers clawing at the water. His hand brushed something soft. Fabric. He clamped his fingers down, gripping the strap of her swimsuit. He kicked hard, pulling upward, his boots scraping against a submerged rock. They broke the surface together. The girl was limp, her eyes closed, her hair plastered across her face. I got you, Cole gasped, though she couldn't hear him. I got you. He flipped onto his back, hooking his arm across her chest, keeping her face out of the water. Now came the hard part. The shore looked miles away, though it was only 50 yards. The current was dragging them toward the center of the channel. Cole kicked. Every stroke was a battle. His vision blurred at the edges. His starving body was rapidly burning through its last reserves of energy. Don't quit. Not now. Not for this. He focused on the sky. It was so blue. It seemed indifferent to the struggle happening below. Kick, pull, kick, pull. The girl coughed. A small, ragged sound. She vomited river water and started to cry. Hold on, Cole gritted out. He felt the current slacken slightly. They were in an eddy behind a large boulder. He used the last of his strength to shove them toward the bank. His knee struck a rock, sending a jolt of pain up his leg, but he welcomed it. Solid ground. He dragged himself through the mud, pulling the girl with him. They collapsed onto the rocky shore, 10 yards downstream from where the bikers were partying. Cole lay there, heaving, his chest rising and falling like a bellows. He couldn't move, but the silence was broken. Screams. Maya. Oh my God, Maya. The mother. Cole rolled onto his side. The girl, Maya, was coughing, crying, terrified but alive. Then the ground shook. Heavy boots running. Where is she? Where's my daughter? It was the president. The father. Cole scrambled backward, an instinctual reaction to the aggression in the man's voice. He watched as the giant biker fell to his knees, scooping the little girl into his arms, checking her face, her breathing. The mother collapsed beside them, sobbing hysterically. A crowd of leather-clad men surrounded them, a wall of concern and panic. Is she okay? Vince, is she okay? She's breathing. She's crying. Thank God. In the chaos, no one looked at Cole. He was just a wet lump on the mud, outside the circle of their family. He shivered. The adrenaline was crashing, leaving him cold and nauseous. He coughed, and his lungs rattled. He knew that sound. River water in the lungs. Bacterial soup. He looked at the reunion. The father holding his child, weeping openly. The brothers patting him on the back. It was a world of connection, of loyalty, of love. A world Cole didn't belong to. He stood up, swaying. His legs felt like jelly. Get out, his mind whispered. Police will come. Ambulance will come. Questions. ID checks. You don't have ID. You'll get hassled. Cole backed away. 1 step. 2. He turned and limped toward the shadows of the bridge. He retrieved his backpack from where he had dropped it. He didn't look back. He didn't wait for a thank you. He just wanted to disappear before he became a problem. He vanished into the city, leaving only a trail of wet footprints on the pavement that quickly evaporated in heat. Vincent Castellano held his daughter, so tight he thought he might break her. The terror was slowly receding, replaced by a cold, sharp rage at himself. I took my eyes off her. 4 or 5 seconds. Paramedics had arrived. They were checking Maya out. She's fine, Mr. Castellano. Swallowed some water, a bit of shock, but her vitals are strong. Whoever pulled her out saved her life. Seconds mattered here. Whoever. Vincent blinked, the fog of panic lifting. He stood up, looking around the rocky shore. Where is he? Who, boss? Asked Derek, the sergeant-at-arms, a man with tattoos covering his skull. The guy. The swimmer. I saw someone in the water. Vincent spun around, scanning the crowd of onlookers. Who pulled her out? A woman in the crowd pointed. It was a boy. Young guy. Looked homeless. He was sitting right there. Vincent looked at the muddy spot on the bank. It was empty. Where did he go? Vincent demanded, his voice booming. He walked off, the woman said. Right after you guys ran over. He looked hurt. He was limping. Vincent felt a knot of shame tighten in his gut. A stranger, a kid with nothing, had risked his life to save the most precious thing in Vincent's world, and Vincent hadn't even looked him in the eye. Derek, Vincent barked. The command in his voice snapped the Hells Angels to attention. The party was over. This was business. Yeah, boss. Find him. How? I don't care how. We own this city. You get every prospect, every hang-around, every brother on a bike. You scour the waterfront. You check the shelters. You check the bridges. You find the kid in the wet clothes. Vincent looked at the river, his eyes hard. Nobody saves a Hells Angel's blood and walks away unpaid. That's a debt. And we always pay our debts. The hunt began. For the next 48 hours, the Hells Angels turned Portland upside down. It wasn't a violent rampage. It was a systematic dragnet. 400 bikers from the Oregon chapters mobilized. They rumbled through the homeless encampments under the steel bridge. They idled outside the soup kitchens in Old Town. They pulled up to street corners, terrifying the local dealers not for drug money, but for information. Have you seen a kid? 20 years old. Brown hair. Soaking wet. Sick. Because Cole was sick. He had felt it starting that first night. The fever. The burning in his chest. The aspiration pneumonia setting in from the dirty river water. He had tried to go to a shelter, but they were full. He tried to sleep in a park, but the sprinklers came on. He ended up behind a Riverside Plaza, a high-end shopping center built right on the water, trying to catch the warmth from the drier vents of the restaurants. By the third day, Cole couldn't stand. He was delirious. He drifted in and out of consciousness, dreaming of his parents, dreaming of the river. He didn't know that 3 blocks away, a prospect named Luis was showing a blurry cell phone picture taken by a tourist to the park to a hot dog vendor. Yeah, I seen him, the vendor said, nervous. About an hour ago. He looked bad, man. Stumbling. He went into the alley behind the plaza. Luis keyed his radio. Boss, I got him. Riverside Plaza. Loading dock. The silence in the alley was absolute, broken only by the ticking of cooling engines. Rick, the security guard, looked from the massive biker president to the boy on the ground. The color had drained from Rick's face, leaving it the shade of old paste. I was just helping him, Rick stammered, his voice climbing an octave. He was loitering. I was telling him where the shelter is. Vincent ignored him. He was still on his knees, staring at Cole. Cole looked like death. His lips were cracked and blue. His skin was burning hot to the touch, yet he was shivering violently. His breath came in shallow, rattling rasps. You're burning up, Vincent whispered. He unclasped his leather cut, the sacred vest of the Hells Angels, and without hesitation, draped it over Cole's soaking wet, filthy t-shirt. The collective gasp from the bikers behind him was audible. The cut was everything. You didn't let it touch the ground. You didn't let a civilian wear it. But Vincent didn't care. Get the truck. Vincent barked over his shoulder. We're going to the hospital. Not the county one. The private one. Now, he turned back to Cole. Can you stand, son? Cole looked at the leather vest covering him. The Death Head logo was heavy and warm. He looked at Vincent. My backpack, Cole whispered. He outkicked it. Vincent froze. Slowly, very slowly, the president of the Hells Angels stood up. He turned to face Rick. The change in the air was instantaneous. The sorrow evaporated, replaced by a violence so palpable it felt like static electricity. Vincent was 6 feet 4 inches, 250 pounds of muscle and scar tissue. Rick was a man who bullied teenagers. You kicked his bag? Vincent asked. His voice was terrifyingly calm. Rick backed up until he hit the dumpster. It was an accident. I was just moving it. Vincent took a step forward. This boy saved my daughter's life. He jumped into the Willamette Rapids while I was standing around drinking a beer. He breathed life back into her. Vincent took another step. Rick was trembling so hard his keys jingled on his belt. And you, Vincent snarled. You kicked him while he was down? You treated a hero like garbage. I didn't know. Rick squealed. I didn't know who he was. Please. Ignorance isn't an excuse for cruelty, Vincent said. Derek, the sergeant-at-arms, stepped up beside Vincent. He cracked his knuckles. Boss, let me handle this. We don't want you catching a charge. Vincent stared at Rick for a long, agonizing moment. He saw the fear in the man's eyes. He saw the pathetic weakness of a bully stripped of his power. He's not worth the jail time, Vincent said, spitting on the ground near Rick's shiny shoes. But if I ever see you near this kid again, if I ever hear you raise your voice to anyone with less than you. He let the threat hang. It was heavier than any punch. Get out of my sight, Vincent roared. Rick ran. He ran back into the building, abandoning his post, his dignity, and his baton. Vincent turned back to the brothers. Pick him up. Gentle. Like he's glass. Two large bikers moved in, lifting Cole with surprising tenderness. They carried him to the waiting support truck. As they loaded him in, Cole looked at Vincent. Why? He rasped. I'm nobody. Vincent leaned in, gripping Cole's hand. You're wrong. You're family now. And family looks out for family. The next week was a blur of white walls and beeping machines. Cole had severe pneumonia and pleurisy. His body was malnourished, his immune system shot. The doctors at St. Mary's Hospital said that if he had spent one more night on the street, he wouldn't have woken up. But he wasn't on the street. He was in a private room. And he was never alone. For 7 days, there was a Hell's Angel outside his door, 24/7. They took shifts. They sat in the plastic chairs, reading magazines, scaring the nurses, and ensuring that Cole Bennett wanted for nothing. When the fever finally broke on the 5th day, Cole woke up to see a small face peering over the edge of his bed. Hi, Ma whispered. She looked different than she had in the river. Dry, clean, happy. She was holding a drawing. It was a picture of a stick figure with a blue shirt fighting a squiggle that looked like water. Daddy said you were sick because you saved me, she said. Cole swallowed. His throat was still sore. I'm okay. You're my hero, she said simply. She placed the drawing on his chest. Vincent stepped out from the corner of the room. He looked tired, but his eyes were warm. How you feeling, kid? Better, Cole said. He looked around the room. The bill. I can't pay this. I have $7. Vincent laughed. It was a deep, rumbling sound. The bill is taken care of. The club handles it. I can't accept that. You can, and you will, Vincent said sternly. But we're not done. He pulled a set of keys from his pocket and tossed them onto the bed. What's this? Apartment keys. It's a studio 2 blocks from the clubhouse. It's paid up for a year. Utilities, too. Cole felt tears pricking his eyes. He tried to blink them away. Why are you doing this? I told you, Vincent said. A debt is a debt. But it's more than that. I looked into your file, Cole. Foster care. Runaway. No record. You're a survivor. You got grit. Vincent leaned forward. Derek owns a collision shop. He needs an apprentice. Someone to sweep floors, learn the tools, work his way up. It pays $20 an hour to start. You interested? Cole couldn't speak. He just nodded. Good, Vincent said. Rest up. You get out on Saturday. Sunday we have a church meeting. You're coming. Sunday. The Hells Angels clubhouse was a fortress. High walls, security cameras, steel doors. Cole arrived in fresh clothes, jeans that fit, a clean white t-shirt, and new boots. He felt nervous. He walked through the gates, and the sound of conversation died down. 400 bikers were gathered in the courtyard. They were drinking, eating, smoking. When they saw Cole, they stopped. Vincent stood on a makeshift stage, a wooden pallet stack. He held a microphone. Bring him up, Vincent commanded. Cole walked through the crowd. Men who would terrify anyone in a dark alley reached out to pat him on the back. Good job, kid. Respect. Solid. He climbed onto the stage next to Vincent. Brothers! Vincent shouted. The crowd roared. We talk a lot about loyalty, Vincent said, his voice echoing off the clubhouse walls. We talk about respect. We talk about what makes a man. A lot of people think it's about how hard you can hit or how fast you can ride. He put a heavy hand on Cole's shoulder. This here is Cole. 3 years ago, society threw him away, treated him like garbage. A week ago, he was starving. But when he saw my little girl go into that water, he didn't hesitate. Vincent looked at the crowd. He didn't ask for money. He didn't ask for fame. He saved her, and he walked away to die in an alley because he didn't think he was worth our time. A murmur of angry denial went through the crowd. We found him, Vincent said. And we said it right. Vincent turned to Cole. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small rectangular patch. It wasn't the full back patch, that took years to earn. It was a small front patch. Prospect. Usually, Vincent said, a man has to hang around for months just to get invited to a party. He has to scrub toilets to get looked at. But you. Vincent pinned the patch onto Cole's new shirt, right over his heart. You've already been through the fire. Or the water, I guess. The crowd laughed. You're a prospect of the Hells Angels Oregon chapter. If you want it. Cole looked at the patch. He looked at the sea of faces. For 2 years, he had been invisible. He had been trashed to be kicked by security guards. He had been a ghost. Now he saw 400 brothers. He saw a father who loved him. He saw a future. Cole looked up at Vincent. I want it. Then welcome home, brother, Vincent said, pulling him into a bear hug. The roar of the crowd was louder than the engines. It was a sound of acceptance. Cole Bennett looked out at his new family. He wasn't the homeless boy under the bridge anymore. He wasn't the victim. He was a Hell's Angel prospect. And God help anyone who tried to kick him now.